That day, Nancy came to see me with her grandson. She was raising him alone after his parents were killed in a car accident. Tommy was 6 years old and barely spoke. The three of us sat together, his grandmother, Tommy, and me. I held up picture cards while he studied them with those serious little eyes. Slowly, one word at a time. Moments like that remind me why I do this work. I dreamed for years of opening a children's center, not just another office, but a real place where kids like Tommy could come again and again. Without being rushed, without endless waiting lists. My name is Mary Sterling. I've been a speech therapist for 20 years. But now that name also belongs to a woman with a plan. After my last appointment, I drove to Alicia's clinic. It was an upscale private clinic, a spotless lobby, soft music playing. A nurse behind the front desk, with the kind of face that had learned how to keep secrets. Her name was Sarah. I tried asking a few careful questions, keeping it casual. She gave me a polite, professional smile. Patient information was confidential. I stayed there until closing. Then I waited a little longer, sitting on the front steps in the cool April breeze. Finally, Sarah came out, wearing her coat with her purse over her shoulder, hurrying home. She saw me and stopped. "You're still here," I nodded. "Listen," she said gently. "I understand what you're going through, but revenge never ends well." Revenge, that's what she called it. I thanked her and walked away, but my mind was already somewhere else. I needed someone on the inside. Victoria called that evening. Focused and efficient, she'd already done exactly what I'd asked. She found a cleaning lady at the maternity hospital. A woman who'd worked there for years, knew the schedule, and noticed everything. For a modest payment, she agreed to let us know. The moment Alicia was admitted in labor. It was a breakthrough. Then Isaac Wayne called back. His voice was apologetic. They hadn't found any hidden accounts. Everything was clean. Legally, there was nothing. I thanked him and hung up. Outside, the April evening settled over New York, the city glowing with lights. I sat in the kitchen with a cup of cold tea, staring at the wall. "Where are you hiding the money, Andrew?" That question had haunted me from the very beginning. I put on a light-colored dress. Simple, elegant, understated. I styled my hair and was ready to head out. Then the doorbell rang, Lauren, uninvited. Looking worried, "Mary, are you going somewhere?" I smiled and told her I had a date. I saw her tense up. Good, let her worry, let her call Andrew. Let him get a little nervous too, in his hospital room. I walked out of the building, hailed a cab, and headed where I'd planned to go all along. Not on a date, of course. I needed to ask a favor from someone I hadn't seen in years. The Eagle, Pierce Vance. Jean-Luc met me at the entrance, a manager with flawless manners. He led me through the room, past the carved door at the very end. Pierce Vance. We hadn't seen each other in maybe 10 years. No, longer. Growing up, he called me Redhead. I called him Eagle. He was sitting at his desk, looking at me like I'd walked in just yesterday. I didn't beat around the bush. I asked him point blank, acquire Andrew's restaurant, push him out of the market, take full advantage of the situation. Pierce listened carefully without interrupting. Then he slowly shook his head. "No, Redhead. Not like that." I looked at him, thinking, he's going to refuse, but he won't walk away. This was only the beginning of our negotiation. I headed home with a heavy head. Nobody helped me. Pierce turned me down. Without money or connections, there was no way to get the restaurant back. It felt bitter. I had poured so much of myself into it, only to end up as nothing more than the restaurateur's wife. I parked, went upstairs, and unlocked the door. The apartment lights were on, and dishes were clinking. Clenching the pepper spray in my bag, I froze. But then Andrew walked out. Right off the bat, he demanded to know where on earth I'd been gallivanting around until 11 at night. I coldly replied that I was at a business meeting and instantly went on the attack. I asked who the pregnant girl visiting him in the hospital was, and if she was another one of his sisters. A flash of terror washed over his eyes. Andrew tried to lie, but I told him to cut the crap. I told him straight up that I knew everything about his pregnant wife, whom I'd already spoken to, and about his plan to ship me off to a psych ward. Andrew went dead silent, frantically searching for an escape route, but there wasn't one. Andrew began speaking with deep sincerity, assuring me he had realized everything and begging for forgiveness. I looked into his eyes and knew he was asking me to put my rose-colored glasses back on. In an icy tone, I told him to pack his bags. But Andrew had the nerve to claim this was his home, setting himself down on the couch. My eyes fell on his wallet and phone sitting on the table. While he was trying to figure things out, I grabbed them and slipped out onto the balcony. Andrew rushed after me as everything went flying down: documents, cash, and car keys. He screamed in a panic that his passport was down there, so I shouted after him to run faster before the homeless picked it all up. Cursing up a storm, Andrew bolted out of the apartment. I locked the door on the chain and headed for the closet. There would be no forgiveness. I was done being a fool. I started yanking everything out of the closet: Tom Ford jackets, Zegna turtlenecks, jeans, and piled them onto the floor. I'd ironed every single piece with my own hands. The amount of effort I'd poured into keeping him looking sharp. Let his new little wifey do the laundry now. I dragged the pile out to the balcony. Down below, cursing away, Andrew was still crawling around looking for his keys. I shouted for him to wait and tossed his laptop over the edge. In a panic, he begged me not to touch the laptop. There was important info on it. I just sneered and asked if he'd caught it. Too bad he missed. I shut the balcony door and went to make some tea. Suddenly, a thought hit me like a ton of bricks. Why on earth had Andrew rushed out of the hospital like that? I hadn't shared my plans with anyone. Except Lauren. No way, or... The next day, I drove over to Lauren's. Seeing her walk into her apartment building, I dialed her number. Flustered, Lauren lied that she wasn't home, but I had to burst her bubble. She let me in. Pure fear was written all over her face. I asked her point blank if she was the one who told Andrew about the date. Lauren kept denying it. So I told her to stop lying. After all, her top-tier lawyer had turned out to be a complete joke. And she herself had been insisting I give up everything without a fight. Suddenly, Lauren's face twisted with malice. She screamed that the pregnant girl was her niece. My so-called friend spat out that I had always bragged about my happy life, and now it was my turn to taste what she had been living through. Behind that mask lay nothing but hatred and envy. I called her a rotten snake and walked out of her life for good. I drove back to the empty apartment, running on fumes. My friend's betrayal had shattered me. My trust in people was completely gone. Tears welled up in my eyes as a wave of deep exhaustion washed over me. I genuinely caught myself wondering if taking this to court was even worth it, or if it would be easier to just throw in the towel. I unlocked the door and froze. Someone was inside. Fear instantly morphed into pure rage. I marched into the living room, only to stand there completely stunned. The room was literally buried in massive bouquets of flowers, with a full spread of food and champagne laid out on the table. Out walked Andrew from the kitchen, wearing a white chef's hat and an apron. He gave me a playful wink, flashing a wide grin, and announced that he wanted to make peace. I could barely fight off a smirk. Forcing a stern expression, I cut him off cold, telling him there would be no reconciliation. When he guiltily admitted that he deserved to be punished, I calmly told him to go punish himself, because all I wanted to do was eat. Andrew earnestly admitted his guilt, swearing his love and begging me to stay. I ate, starving as a wolf, and listened. My phone lay right beside me, quietly recording every single word. My husband went on about what to do with his pregnant mistress, suggesting he just toss her some cash or banish her to some godforsaken backwater village. I'd had enough. In an icy tone, I told him to pack his bags. In response, Andrew screamed that he'd leave me without a stitch of clothing to my name and slammed the door with a loud bang. In the quiet that followed, I checked the recording. It was top-notch, and snapped a few photos of the table covered in flowers. Before long, he called from an unknown number, throwing around threats about his connections and taking me to court. I told him where to shove it and hung up. My hands were shaking with the wild urge to smash his face in. I'm not backing down.